MLB Strategy Show. It is Thursday, September 9th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher, and we're not going to be here all that long because we've only got a 5-game main slate to break down, and it's locking a little bit earlier on DraftKings, 6:40 Eastern time, so make sure you're aware of that as we get closer to the first day of the NFL season. But either way, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. We're still talking baseball here, Adam. How are you feeling about that?
Good. I would, at this point, just like it to go away. I liked it a lot more a month or so ago, but it's still fun. Like, I think it's a fun DFS sport. Strategy's fun. It's just really annoying when it doesn't work out. Like yesterday, like you spend, all day saying, I'm using this guy in this kind of build, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to not make teams where, I'm using Darvish plus Montas at, 40 to 50% ownership apiece combined with the highest owned Kansas City team. And then you look and that's what won the slate. So, it's frustrating when it doesn't work out, but strategy wise, I think it's really fun.
Yeah, that is really, really brutal. So like I said, we have 5 games to break down. We've got plenty of time to do so. So we'll take our sweet time. If you guys have in chat, have any questions, today's a really good day for that. We'll have much easier time answering those and not like a 2v2. Like, if you have any actual questions, Adam and I will be happy to hit on them. But right now, let's just start it off with Marlins and Mets. 3.4 run implied total for the Marlins, 4.5 for the Mets. It's a 62% chance to win for New York. Jesus Luzardo and Marcus Stroman going today. Stroman's 9,400. Luzardo is 6,700. I mean, by the way, this game is not on the FanDuel slate, but I think that I like Luzardo more than I like Stroman today. I don't know if that's craziness or not, but I'm curious to get your thoughts.
If you're ignoring salary, it's absolutely batshit crazy.
Obviously, Marcus Stroman projects better than Jesus Luzardo. If you're just going raw points, right. I am not ignoring salary for this discussion.
Yeah, I was just making sure that your projections weren't wrong again, like on the Ohtani bet. But I think that Luzardo's salary is reasonable. Like on this slate, when you look at the alternatives, Luzardo has better strikeout stuff than Senzatella. I think I would prefer Carlos Hernandez against the Orioles, but that's really, really close. It's a better park for Luzardo. I don't think you're crazy for liking him. I do like Stroman a lot, though, because I don't really think that there's a whole lot else in the way of pitching that is that appealing. So I'm a little bit more willing to go to Stroman in Miami. The Marlins have a 3.3 implied run total. I would say I really like Stroman, but I have interest in both pitchers here.
Yeah, so Luzardo showed up in 47% of my sims, Stroman 45%. Because Marcus Stroman at 9,400 is rarely like a fun price tag, just given his profile. But when you get to do it in Miami against the Marlins, it's not too shabby. So I think these two guys are going to be my 2 favorite pitchers for the day. The park helps it out a ton. They are the guys that are showing up more than anyone else. Stroman and Luzardo are my top 2 options at pitcher. I did not expect that when I first ran it. I thought that I accidentally gave Jesus Luzardo more innings in my first run. That was not the case. So this just looks like a spot where I don't think there's going to be a lot of offense. By the way, I already bet the under on this game. I have it pretty significantly under as well. So if anybody wants to tail that, feel free. But to me, this one's pitching and it is not hitting. Although if these guys are 40+% owned on a 5-gamer, we have a bigger decision to talk about.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have no issue getting the Mets bats here, though. I mean, Luzardo has just been like the talent is there. We know that, but he's so volatile. He's been so bad this year. As a starter, he has a 21.3% strikeout percentage, 11.1% walk percentage, 5.05 xFIP, 1.6 home runs per 9. The guy has not been good. And so when you talk about this Mets team, yeah, the park isn't great. The Mets offense certainly has its share of issues, but the players in it are still pretty high upside guys from, VR really down through at least Javi Baez. You can throw, James McNeil in there too, if you want. McNeil, obviously you prefer against a righty, but this is still an offense that can do damage if Luzardo is just getting behind in counts and walking everyone. It's still a high upside spot. If Luzardo is getting ownership, I would really like the Mets here. Even if he's not getting ownership, I still think it's a high upside spot for New York.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm getting to either side of it, it's very clearly the Mets. They still don't grade out all that well, but I have them at a 5% chance of being the top stack. That's more than fine to me on a day like today. It's clearly not the top of the heap, but if Jesus Luzardo is getting 30-40% ownership today, it's going to be pretty easy to want to get some stacks on the opposite side, even if it doesn't necessarily profile all that well for me out of the gate. VR and Lindor in the 1-2 spots are the guys showing up the most for me. Would you assume just generally, though, the pitching would be the priority?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would say the Mets side is the priority for me, but
okay,
like including Stroman. But
okay.
yeah, like I would expect Luzardo's going to show up in lineups. There's five games. He's cheap. It's not the worst matchup. It's just like I still have no confidence in this guy, and I think that there's like I think I just kind of end up preferring going to Suarez and going to Hernandez over Luzardo, especially. But I don't feel strongly on any of that in the sense that like I don't care about ownership. I really just want whoever the lowest owned out of that group is, because I think that they are all relatively risky.
That's fair. Is there justification to going to the Marlins bats today against Stroman? This one feels a bit more difficult.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty tough. You do have, like, you'll probably have leverage there because Stroman should be really, really popular.
Yeah.
But there are still a lot of good offenses on this slate, even though there's only 5 games. You have the Braves, you have the Yankees, you have the Blue Jays. The Phillies have a 5 implied run total. The Orioles are approaching 5. So I think that in your largest field tournaments, if Stroman's getting something crazy like 50-60% ownership, Miami's fine. But I wouldn't really, I'd be more inclined to be loading up on whatever offense is facing the most popular of Luzardo, Suarez, Hernandez than I would trying to take guys against Stroman.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton of interest in grabbing the worst offense on the slate, or at least maybe second worst, depending on how you feel about the Rockies, in one of the best pitcher parks in baseball against a pitcher that doesn't profile as a guy that gets like totally blown up. And like Stroman's a much better real life pitcher than he is a DFS pitcher. All of those things don't look great. You get the leverage from the Stroman ownership. Every other sign to me is don't attack this pitcher. His ownership seems reasonable to me, even in the 9Ks. So I'm happy to pretty much stay away from the Marlins today.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I am. It goes back to, I know I've said it before, but when I'm looking to negatively correlate, obviously the more popular a pitcher is, the better, the more powerful it is to stack against him. But I typically still view it more in the sense of, are they getting more ownership than they deserve? And that's why I think whoever ends up being the most popular of the Luzardo, Suarez, Hernandez group is likely to be more overowned than more popular than I really think they should be compared to Stroman.
Absolutely. I don't have anything else here, but we can hit it with, who is your favorite bat in this game?
Alonso.
Okay.
Kind of feels like a cop out, but I think it sort of has to be Alonso.
I mean, if Lindor's Lindor, it's Lindor. I know that's a really weird sentence to say, but
if what? Wait, what'd you say?
If Lindor is Lindor, then it's Lindor. Which is, it doesn't make a ton of sense until until you think about how he's been this year. I haven't looked at it in a while.
I have no idea how he's doing lately.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like maybe he's been himself. I'm looking it up now. For the season, 95 weighted runs created plus. That is brutal. Brutal. Sub 400 slugging. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Still worth 2 wins though, so who knows? All right, we'll keep it moving.
The numbers are bad too.
Are they really?
So I mean, I only have it against left-handed pitching in front of me, but 166. So it's actually not as bad as his numbers. He only has 127 plate appearances against lefties this year. Actual WOBA is 294. Actual ISO is 107, but his expected WOBA is 347. His expected ISO is 166.
336 expected WOBA overall this season. And he's actually got a 305. So pretty well underneath it. 345 last year. Wow. So this is really wild. He had a 349 WOBA in 2019, 115 weighted runs created plus, but his expected WOBA was 328. His expected WOBA this season is higher than it was in his 2019 season for Cleveland.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Man, like the power is obviously not there the way that you would expect it to be, but I really wonder how much we should be looking into that. Like, is 2019 the outlier? Is 2021 the outlier? Has nothing really changed? Is he just like a 335 WOBA guy and the fluctuations can just be that big?
With hitting, I typically just don't pay any attention at all, and I assume that they're going to be the same guy they've always been.
Okay. Well, and that's how it runs. Like 328 xWOBA in 19, 345 last year, obviously abbreviated, 336 this year. Like he just seems to be like a 335 xWOBA hitter, and you kind of just have to ignore all of the fluctuations.
Yeah, like because like I know we've talked about it before, the issues you run into kind of using like projection systems with pitchers, but I think it's so much easier for pitchers to make adjustments because like they're the ones in control. They're throwing the ball. The hitters, like, yeah, we saw, a few years ago where a lot of guys figured out that hitting fly balls is good. And so, they adjusted their swings. And like there were definitely some guys where it was just like, oh, okay, well, this guy's hitting more home runs now and it's probably legitimate. But even then, like there was so much noise in that. Like you go back and you look at I think there was a stretch where Eric Hosmer was hitting the ball in the air a lot. And it was like, wow, maybe he's actually going to be like the power hitter we thought he was going to be. And then it stops. Yonder Alonso looked like he was going to suddenly be like a perennial all-star. Now I'm pretty sure he's not in baseball. So like there's still plenty of noise in that. And it's just so like hitting is so hard and you're not in control. You're still reacting to what the pitchers are doing and, basically doing what you can with that. So like as a whole, yeah, guys are hitting the ball in the air more, but I'm a lot less interested in what hitters are doing year to year or recently than I am in pitchers because they can make one change and just everything is different.
I'm with you there. Interesting stuff on Lindor. Now we'll move on to your Orioles. 4.6 run implied total. Same thing on the opposite side for Kansas City. John Means and Carlos Hernandez. God, I feel like you and I talk about John Means a lot. Yeah. 7,100 for Means for Baltimore. 6,300 for Carlos Hernandez. I got these guys equally at 16% today. I don't have much of a take on either side. I think the Orioles offense just a hair better, but nothing too crazy. I think I don't really know how to hash out the talent between these two guys. So do you have a guy that you prefer?
I think Means is better, but I don't have a really strong preference as a starter. As a starter this year, Hernandez has a 19.1% strikeout percentage, 4.73 xFIP. Means 22.9% strikeout percentage, 4.4 xFIP. Hernandez is walking 9.2% of hitters. Means is at 4.4%. Means has allowed more power, but I think Means is the better pitcher out of the two. You also certainly have a longer track record of Means having at least some level of success at the major leagues. So that combined with, I agree, I think the offenses are pretty similar, but I'd give the edge to the Orioles. They are favored here. If ownership is equal between these two and the salary ends up not mattering, I would end up with more Means than Hernandez.
Interesting. Okay. The reason that I don't think that I'll end up with more Means than Hernandez, at least as of right now, is that I have the Kansas City Royals as the number 2 stack on today's slate. I have the Orioles number 4.
Number 2 in terms of what?
Likelihood of being an they're my number 2 in my top stack model, 15.6% chance.
They have like the 5th lowest implied run total.
Yeah, that's true. They also play in Baltimore. Helpful for the Taters. Helpful a little bit in terms of being a top stack, but it's a price thing more than anything. Mondesi 4,500 still has that dual eligibility. They've got the right guys in the right spots in their order. Salvador Perez is going to pull a ton of ownership as a catcher. I'm not saying they're not going to be over-owned.
Wait, so are you factoring value into that? Or you're just saying like you think Kansas City has the second best chance of scoring the second most runs on the slate?
I think...
Or second best chance of scoring the most runs, rather.
The latter.
Okay,
I think Kansas City has the second most chance of being the top scoring stack on this slate.
Yeah, like that's seems crazy to me, but
we'll see when the top stack odds come out.
I guess like the Yankees
think they're going to be over-owned.
The Yankees and the Blue Jays do have tough matchups, I guess, but still.
Look, like Merrifield in the leadoff spot is going to pull a lot of ownership, 5,200 at second on a 5-gamer. Like, I think we both agree that's probably going to happen. Salvador Perez has just been doing that as of late. Mondesi has been doing that given his current price and role. Those 3 guys are going to drive a lot of it. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the Royals are also the most over-owned team on the slate. I think we're going to see both of those things happen.
Yeah, I do expect that they'll be over-owned. They're just really, really cheap again. Salvador Perez is just night in and night out one of the best plays. He's priced where he should be at 6,100. Merrifield is about where he should be at 5,200, but everyone else is so cheap. It's so easy to get to these guys. You still have third base and shortstop eligibility on Mondesi, which is really useful. So yeah, they're going to get a lot of ownership, which again is something that I think is going to push means up for me.
Do you know who pitched for Baltimore yesterday?
Harvey.
Okay. Well, that's worse than means, because I was going to say Kansas City #2 stack on yesterday's top stack with 18 teams. So
yeah, like a 5.2 implied run total yesterday or something.
Interesting. And I mean, Steamer projects means pretty poorly. He's got a worse FIP than Carlos Hernandez in this spot. So I'm also a little bit more negative towards means. And I have the run total a little bit higher just from a projection standpoint. So I'm interested in Kansas City until I see the ownership. Doesn't mean that I'm not also interested in the Baltimore bats. They are my #4. Marlins in the leadoff spot, I think, looks great. The ownership is going to tell a big story here, but I'm happy to get to either offense. This seems like a game where I'm going to have a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's a good offensive environment. Neither pitcher is lights out. Where you do have other good offenses, the Braves are in a great spot against Fetty, but other than that, you have the Blue Jays have a tough matchup with Cortez. The Yankees have a tough matchup with Berrios. This game seems like it could get a lot of runs. It is worth noting that it's not particularly warm in Baltimore. I think it's supposed to be like 70 degrees tonight. Camden Yards, like it's a favorable hitter's park, but part of the reason that it gets talked about so much as a great park to hit in is because it gets hot and humid during the summer and the ball just absolutely flies. Like the beginning, April and September months, it actually plays a lot more straight up too.
Okay, good to know. So let's rank these things: Orioles bats, Royals bats, Means, and Hernandez. Do you have an order of preference of how you would like to get to all four things?
But it's so hard without knowing ownership.
Agreed.
I just want whatever is the lowest owned. I think I probably get to Baltimore. I probably get to the Orioles bats, and then Means, and then Hernandez, and then the Orioles bats.
Yeah. All right. So we are on very different wavelengths here, because I'm expecting, barring ownership, Royals bats. I don't. But
I'm saying that expecting that Kansas City is going to pull a ton of ownership.
Okay, that works for me then. Yeah, I think that I'll ultimately like the Orioles bats more than the Royals bats once we see ownership. And for pitching, I don't have a clue. I don't know how these two guys are going to shake out. I assume Means is slightly more owned. Just profiles a little bit better there. I don't know how much that's going to matter to me. This is a weird game. Man, Baltimore is so cheap across the board. Mullins and Mountcastle, the only guys north of 3,900. Not going to be hard to roster those guys at all. It's not going to be hard to do anything. I mean, Marcus Stroman is the most expensive pitcher at 9,400. It's going to be a pretty easy DraftKings day from a salary perspective. Not going to matter all that much. You're going to have a lot of like really weird salary numbers, I think, today. I don't have anything else for Baltimore and Kansas City.
No, me neither.
All righty. Well, let's talk a little bit about schedule, because we have all of the shows today. This is a full one. So NFL strategy show coming up after this at 11 a.m. Laffy and Matt Savoca. We got the 1 p.m. Awesemo betting show with Eitan and Ben. I believe that's going to be on Awesemo odds. 2 p.m. We've got a No House Advantage live show with Eric and Greg. Adam, you will be back for MLB Live Before Lock at 5:30 with Terry. We've got the NFL Deeper Dive for the opener tonight. Laffy, Alex, and Ben going for an hour from 6:30 to 7:30. Turning it over to NFL Live Before Lock with Greg and Matt from 7:30 till whenever the NFL game actually closes. So tons going on there. We've got NFL Showdown top plays free today. MLB player rankings free today. A lot of good free content. A lot of shows to watch. It's going to be a great day for the Awesemo content and the Awesemo community. Now we move it on to Yankees and Blue Jays. 4.8 run implied total for the Yankees, 4.6 for the Blue Jays. Nestor Cortez and Jose Berrios. Berrios came out of my sim at 29% ownership, which is terrifying against the Yankees. Meanwhile, Cortez did not show up all that frequently at 8K. I want to get your thoughts here. How do you feel about the pitching?
I don't think Nestor Cortez is nearly as good as other people do or as his results have been. So I guess I'm going to just keep getting crushed when he goes out there and just lights up every team that he faces. But like he's pitched well recently. He's coming off of a good start against the Orioles, struggled against Oakland, had a good start against Minnesota, was good against the White Sox. Overall, as a starter this year, 22.3% strikeout percentage, 4.87 xFIP, 1.32 home runs per nine. I think he's okay. I just have a really hard time thinking he's going to have success here at 8K against a Blue Jays team that has tons and tons of right-handed power and doesn't really strike out. So again, like ownership plays a big role here because I do think Cortez is good enough where if the Jays are just like massively owned, I will go elsewhere. But assuming that more ownership is going to go to teams like Kansas City, it's going to go to the Braves. At the very least, I would say those two teams are more popular. Then I think Toronto starts to look pretty good to me.
What about Berrios going against the Yankees? I assume he's going to pull some ownership. How do you feel about him? How do you feel about him in relationship to, say, Marcus Stroman, the other guy in the nines?
If the ownership is similar, I lean towards Stroman just because the matchup is so much better. The Marlins have an implied run total like 1.5 runs lower. They're in a better park. If there is an ownership gap, though, which I assume that there's going to be just because of that difference in implied run total, you can't tell me Berrios doesn't give you just as high a ceiling as Marcus Stroman. Yeah, the matchup is tough, and the Yankees recently haven't been striking out much either, which is really weird. But I assume that turns around based on who is in their lineup. But when you look at their numbers overall this season, Jose Berrios 25.8% strikeout percentage. Marcus Stroman is at 21.3%, 3.65 xFIP for Stroman, 3.62 for Berrios, 1.01 home runs per nine for Berrios, 0.8 for Stroman. Pretty identical walk percentages, pretty similar pitchers in terms of talent. Berrios has the better strikeout stuff, the worst matchup. If you're going to get an ownership difference there, I like going to Berrios just because I think the ceiling is just as high, even though clearly the matchup is worse.
Well, I'm with you on shitting on Cortez and not being all that interested. So I love the Blue Jays. To me, this is my favorite team on the slate. I want the entire team. There's so much power here. It's a great park for power. We're looking at probably 8 righty bats against the lefty in Cortez. I think the Blue Jays implied total is underrepresented for this spot. I want all things Toronto, barring ownership.
Yep. That's where I'm at as well. Like, I think Cortez is good enough that if Toronto is somehow getting more ownership than like the Braves or something, or, Kansas City at their price tags, then I would start to back away. But assuming they're going to be at worst or at most, however you want to word it, the third most popular team on the slate, I like them here.
Yeah, I want everything. Every single guy in this lineup looks like it's a solid move. Even guys that I don't want to get to all that frequently, like lefty Corey Dickerson. Well, he's 3K. Who cares? Like, it's not all that problematic of a price tag. Danny Jansen's got pop 2,900 as a catcher option. Like, you get the Springer, Semien, Guerrero, Bichette group of 4 at the top. I mean, there's no limit to the amount of power in that lineup and the amount of guys that I'd be happy to take. So I love Toronto here. I'm really curious to see where their ownership comes in.
I do want to point out with Cortez, I just ran the numbers on Baseball Savant. As a starter this year, he has held opponents to a 269 expected WOBA. So he has the high xFIP as a starter, but the actual batted ball data is pretty good on him as well. So again, I'm always hesitant to really trust guys going from a relief role to a starter role, especially when they're not striking out a ton of guys. But he has done a good job of limiting power. Not saying that that's going to make me shy away from that it changes the way I'm viewing Toronto here. It is just something to pay attention to. I know I've been negative on Cortez, but as far as, or I don't even want to say negative on Cortez like as a pitcher. I've been negative on him compared to the results he's put up so far. But he has, I think, kind of deserved the results so far. So it's certainly a spot where I could just be wrong.
What do we want to do here with Yankees bats? Let's assume Berrios gets like something north of 20% ownership. They don't grade out all that well for me, but it's still a Yankees lineup that's loaded.
Yeah, I would want them to be low owned, and I would want Berrios to be popular if I'm going to them. I think that, again, there's just more uncertainty in what Cortez is, I think, than what Berrios is. So that's what sort of makes me give the edge to Toronto if ownership's the same and if that's not a factor. I just think that there's a little bit more of a chance that Cortez a year and a half from now, it's just like, who the hell was that guy? He ended up not being good. Whereas Berrios, we know he is good, and it's tough to hit against him. But if the Yankees are low owned and or Berrios is high owned, they still have almost a 5 implied run total here. They still have a very good lineup, and you would be getting some negative correlation with the field. So this slate there's just so many very close spots on this slate that I think this sets up as one where ownership's going to matter a lot to me. I don't love the Yankees against Barrios, but I do if they're pulling like 5% ownership on a 5-game slate.
I don't have anything else to talk about here for Blue Jays and Yanks.
Yeah, same here.
Promo code, people. Use the promo code DAK, D-A-K. Get an Awesemo Plus NFL Weekly Express Pass for just $1. The Express Pass is the best way for you to introduce yourself to Awesemo.com and Awesemo Plus NFL. We've got player and ownership rankings, our expert Slack chat, and everything we have to offer for showdown and single game contests, including our showdown player projections, ownership projections, and top plays. So for the main stuff, you're getting rankings. For showdown, you're still getting projections, and you get it for $1 using this promo code. This is a fantastic discount. It's only going to be valid through Monday, September 13th. So make sure you're getting in. And today's the perfect day, considering we're kicking it off with showdown. Cowboys and Bucks tonight. Should be a good one. I think the Bucks are the biggest favorite on the slate now for the entire week, which is kind of crazy. Not like slate, but like for all the games. Not a great start for the Cowboys. So we'll see where we end up after that.
Yeah,
but now
they should just not bother playing this season. Washington's going to easily win the division.
Oh, God. I hope so, I guess. I don't know. Indifferent. Well, that's not true. I want them to win the division because I definitely don't want the Cowboys or Eagles fans to be happy about anything.
What are Washington's NFC odds? Do you know?
I do not, but I will look them up for you because we've got that kind of time.
Not that I can bet it. I just want it on record that I'm going to bet it with hypothetical money and then bitch about it when they win the NFC.
What's your guess?
I have no idea. Like I look at odds so little that like I don't even have a baseline for what I would like want them to be or think they should be.
What do you think they are from a rank perspective?
Eighth?
No. Wait, to win the NFC or the East?
NFC.
Oh, okay. I was just like, dude, there's 4 teams.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? No wonder
Washington
you don't know the odds.
No respect.
Yeah, no wonder you don't know the odds.
No, they should be favored to win the division, right?
No, they are not. The Cowboys
That's
are.
absurd. The who?
Plus 150 for the Cowboys, plus 200 for the football team, plus 400 for the Giants, plus 500 for the EAGLES Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, Cowboys is whatever. It makes sense. But yeah, what are they to win the conference?
Tied for 8th. 2, 4, 6, 7. Tied for 8th with the Cardinals and Vikings. So there we go.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably for the first time in my life since they signed like Deion Sanders when I was 9. I am really high on. Actually, no, for the first time since RG3's second season.
Yeah.
And then for the second time,
Jason Campbell was like,
I like Jason Campbell, but I never went into a season thinking Washington's going to be really good.
That's fair. I thought we were going to be really good once we got Heath Schuler. I thought we'd be really good once we got Patrick Ramsey. I thought we'd be really good once we got Jason Campbell.
Schuler was before me. I thought Ramsey was going to be good. I thought Campbell was going to be good, but they never were. So like there was never that point where it was just like, oh, they are going to be good this year. Like there was after we saw Griffin's rookie year, and it was just like, oh, they're going to be really good. And then it was like, oh, they're dog shit. And back like when I was 9, and I thought just signing a bunch of players that I had heard of were going to make them good, like Deion Sanders. Like I was really excited for that team. But no, this is like the most excited I've ever been about Washington outside of like those 2 times.
I couldn't have been more excited once we signed Albert Hainsworth, and that went really well.
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Brutal, dude.
That was
brutal.
Yeah. I still remember I was a freshman at Coastal, and I still remember being in the dorm with my roommate who was also a Washington fan, and I was just being like so excited when that broke.
Yeah. And then he broke.
Yeah.
No, they could be good. They could be good. We shall see. Plus 2,200 if you want to get there. But we got baseball to talk about. Phillies and Rockies. 4.9 run implied total for the Phils. 3.6 for the Rockies. Ranger Suarez and Antonio Senzatella. I got to Suarez in 13% of lineups. I got to Senzatella in 7. This is not the most exciting pitching matchup in the world, but Suarez is good.
Yeah, he's been solid this year. He's another guy like Cortez, moved from the bullpen. You've seen his numbers decrease as a starter, at least to some extent. But he's holding hitters to a 262 expected WOBA as a starter this season. He has a 22.2% strikeout percentage, about the same as Cortez, 4.39 xFIP. 0.95 home runs per nine, and just very clearly a better matchup than Cortez, whereas Cortez gets the Blue Jays, Suarez gets the Rockies outside of Coors Field. Actually, thought it was interesting. I was watching the Rockies game. I think it was yesterday afternoon, and we had talked a lot about how they're always so bad outside of Coors. And, it's weird because like, even when they have good hitters, they're bad outside of Coors. And they just happen to be they were talking about Larry Walker making the Hall of Fame. And it was Ryan Spielborgs who played for the Rockies for years. And he was saying how he hates the argument that goes against, Rockies players like Walker and Helton of, their stats are better because they hit in Coors. He was like, you don't understand how damn hard it is to hit outside of Coors. When you're there, you're used to the altitude, you're used to pitches not moving. And then you go on the road and everything moves like crazy and you're not used to it. He's like, nobody talks about the other side, about how freaking hard it is to hit when you're not in Coors, when that's what you're used to. So I thought it was interesting to actually get that backed up. Like that was kind of, our assumption. But anyway, the Rockies outside of Coors here, 3.6 implied run total. Suarez has been good. $7,400 price tag is reasonable. Definitely like Suarez here. Certainly, again, a spot where if he's pulling a crazy amount of ownership, I will go to other guys that I think have a similar range of outcomes. But if we assume, ownership is pretty similar.
We have ownership.
Oh, good. That helps a lot. So we have Stroman at
43. At 29. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's a lot. But it's still, it's the same ballpark as Hernandez. It's the same ballpark as Luzardo. Like between those guys, I like Suarez the most. I will say, and it's going to suck, but Cortez is the guy in this group where if you need the ownership discount, that's where you go.
Yeah, I guess it is. I'd rather go to a little bit more Barrios, honestly.
Right. Not saying that's going to be super necessary, but he's like the one competent pitcher not pulling any ownership today.
Yeah. Do you get to Senzatella?
I don't think so. We have him with the lowest top two pitcher percentage on the slate at 8%, only projected for 3% ownership. He is cheap, but just not. There's really no strikeouts there. I do think he's a decent pitcher in terms of limiting production, but I have a hard time getting to him on the slate when there are so many guys around him in price that, they're more popular, but they just have better strikeout upside. So he's, I guess, like a cheaper version of Cortez, where if I happen to have a lineup that really needs to save a lot of ownership, I would just, use him and pray. But I don't really want to get there.
Top Stack Tool has Colorado at the bottom. I have them 7th, but I do see a little bit of positive leverage there. And if Suarez is 30% owned, even better. We have the Phillies 2nd in Top Stack, slightly negative leveraged. I have them 5th, so I'm a little bit lighter here. Talk to me, I guess, about the Phillies offense. I assume that's where you're going first.
I needed to pull the Top Stack. I need to refresh the Top Stack Tool now that we have it. But I think it's an okay spot against Senzatella. Again, I don't think he's a terrible pitcher in terms of limiting production against left-handed bats this year. He only has a 14.9% strikeout percentage, but a 103 expected ISO, obviously really good. 309 expected WOBA. Righties have hit him a little bit better. 175 expected ISO, 337 expected WOBA, but still not crazy numbers there. Does a pretty good job of, just limiting hard contact and keeping the ball in the park. But you do still have a lot of upside with this Phillies team. Segura, Harper, Realmuto, McCutchen in particular. Then you get some cheaper bats in Gregorius, Miller, Herrera leading off, but probably leading off, but 5,100 is a hell of a price tag for him. It's an expensive team, so that probably keeps the ownership down. We do have them in the middle of the pack in top stack percentage. The way ownership looks right now, I think I would get to them because, for example, they have basically the same top stack percentage as the Mets and as the Blue Jays, but the Mets are pulling 9% ownership. The Blue Jays are pulling 16. The Phillies only at about 7. So it's a spot where I certainly see the risks for Philadelphia as far as Senzatella typically not getting blown up, but I don't think that the Jays or the Mets are drastically better options and they're getting more ownership.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the top stack tool now. Kansas City 2nd, by the way. Fun to see. Toronto over-owned, not ideal.
Yeah, the way it looks right now, I would get to more Kansas City than I thought I was going to and less Toronto.
Should have listened to me. Although I like Toronto I like Toronto regardless, but that ownership was not what I was totally expecting. Thoughts on the Rockies bats? I think that's an important piece if Suarez is 30% owned.
They suck. They have
do suck.
They are projected to go on their own. Yet Suarez is getting ownership, like you said. And as I said before, like I'm more inclined to go to the Rockies in Philly than the Marlins in Miami.
Yeah.
But it's not a drastically different spot to me, I don't think. I mean, they're so bad outside of Coors. You have Crone, who's only 4,300. Story's good. Rogers is pretty cheap, but it's just so hard to get to much on this team that you like. I don't know who Colton Welker is, but I see him in the projected lineup at 2K flat.
Yeah.
He is number 8 in Colorado's system, unranked overall. 3 home runs in 23 games at AAA this year. 3 home runs in 8 games at high A, projects for like a 160 ISO. Okay, so he's another nobody in this lineup. So, yeah, it's a low probability spot. I think I would get to them before I got to Miami if I was looking for a negative correlation stack, though.
All right, that works for me. Yeah, this is going to be a really tricky slate. Just looking at where I have everybody in relationship to everything else, I'm a lot higher on Berrios. I'm a lot higher on Luzardo. I'm a lot lower on Suarez and Means. It's not fun there. Blue Jays, I'm a lot higher on individually, but they're pulling a ton of ownership too, which is kind of scary. It's all looking good for Kansas City, though. I'm not going to lie there. Anything else for Phillies or Rockies?
No, that's it.
Okay. I got to at least talk a little bit about our presenting sponsor on this show. That would be Jock Market. They've turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange, and you don't have to wait till the end of the game to make any money. You can sell your shares immediately as the slate opens. If you have a leadoff hitter in a baseball contest, you can just sell that off right out of the gate. Maybe make a little bit of money. Or if you've shorted any guys, you can do it the exact opposite way. They do have shorting now. Whether it's NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, you can make real money every hour, every minute, every second of any match or game. You can pick up these shares of the players in the pregame IPO phase. Then use the promo code Awesemo when you sign up. This is the key piece to it all. You can get yourself up to a $50 bonus on your first deposit. You're not going to find this offer elsewhere. This is for the Awesemo community. So go download the app on the App Store. It's Jock Market. Just sit on your couch, watch some games, buy and sell some shares of players. It's going to be a good time. That's Jock Market for you, baby. And shout out Jake Anderson. Thank you for joining Team Awesemo on YouTube, man. It's great to see. Happy to have you here. Let's close this one out with Braves and Nats. 5.6 run implied total for the Braves, 3.9 for the Nats. It's Inoa and Fede. And Fede not pulling all that much ownership. I think it should be slightly higher. Inoa pulling quite a bit of ownership. I think it should be lower. I'm very different on this game than the public. I have the Braves actual run total 0.6 of a run below where it actually is. Maybe I'm giving Fede a little bit too much respect. You start with whichever pitcher you prefer to talk about.
I think I'm pretty much on the opposite side of you in regard to everything you just said. The Braves, I think, ignoring ownership, are just the best team today. They are getting the most ownership, still projected to be a little bit under-owned. Eric Fedde, he throws some decent starts together occasionally, but he does have a 24.2% strikeout percentage against right-handed hitters this year, has also allowed a 195 expected ISO, 337 expected WOBA, getting this Braves team that has a lot of right-handed power, and then the lefties are just, good. Freddie Freeman in particular. So I think it's a really, really dangerous spot for him. Overall, this season, he's only struck out 21.2% of hitters, 1.3 home runs per 9, 4.14 xFIP. So I do like the spot for the Braves, but then also the Inoa side, he actually has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 26.8%, 3.45 xFIP. We have him pulling about 28% ownership with a 26.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. But when you compare that to the other pitchers around him, like Marcus Stroman has a 32% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So it's like 1.15 times as likely to be a top 2 pitcher as Inoa, but he's getting like 1.5 times the ownership. So I think relative to Inoa, Stroman's getting more ownership than he deserves. Berrios is getting less, but I think that makes Inoa look pretty good. And then even looking to the guys a little bit, there's a price difference. They're cheaper, but Suarez getting the same amount of ownership with a lower top 2 percentage. Same for Hernandez. Same for for means. So where the salary doesn't make as big of a difference, I'm going to prefer getting to Inoa. I think it's a pretty average matchup against the Nats. Implied run total at 4.1 is reasonable. It's the third lowest on this slate. And again, Inoa leads the slate in strikeout percentage. So I do like him quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lower. I see Berrios as the guy that I want to get to in this range. I think that these guys have the wrong ownership. I think they should both be flip-flop. So that's where I'm standing for it. I don't have much to say for Fede. I just think he should be more than 3% owned, but not like he should be owned anything crazy. I got him at 10%. It's not like a huge stand. Top Pitcher Tool has him basically the exact same explanation. So I don't have much to do there. I have the Atlanta Braves as the biggest negative leverage stack on the slate. So I'm going to throw it to you because they are our number one top stack and not negatively leveraged.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's they have the highest implied run total. Right now, it's basically that I think their ownership is very similar to Toronto. It's very similar to Baltimore, who, again, they're at a completely different price point. But ignoring that, for the sake of this conversation, it's just Atlanta's not pulling as much ownership relative to those teams as they should. I think pretty comparable to Kansas City, who Kansas City basically, or Atlanta rather, is like 1.5 times as likely to be the top stack compared to Kansas City. They're also getting like 1.5 times the ownership. So I think both of those teams actually look better than I expected them to, because like if you think back to when we were talking before ownership came out, my guess was that Atlanta got a ton of it, Kansas City got a ton of it, Toronto kind of fell behind them. Right now you have Toronto basically neck and neck with Atlanta ahead of Kansas City. If that holds, and if Baltimore's ownership holds, I'm going to end up just getting to the Braves and the Royals, because I can take what I think are the, or at least what the top stack tool has is the two most likely stacks to succeed at similar ownership to less probable stacks.
Yeah, I have the Braves a lot lower just because I don't believe in that run total. I'm really curious to see where this ends up at the end of the day, but the Braves would be a team that I'd be trying to get away from given their current public ownership. Not something that I was expecting out of the gate. Then for the Nats, I think that Inoa is overowned. I have the Nats 6th overall. I have them with at least some positive leverage just in general. Plus you get Inoa being in almost a third of lineups. So I kind of like Washington a little bit more than I was expecting. They are showing as a positive leverage stack. We do know Inoa has the ownership. So I think Washington works pretty well in this 5-gamer.
Yeah, I think they're fine. Again, I'm a little bit higher on Inoa than you, so naturally I'm a little bit lower on Washington. I don't think Inoa is going overowned, so that doesn't push Washington up as much. But I agree. I mean, they are an average offense. They are cheap. Like, I think that Washington can kind of serve the same role that Baltimore is, but at lower ownership, where they're just a cheap team that I prefer the Orioles bats, but at half the ownership, they're a cheap team that you can just use for value if you need to.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else for Braves and Nats, and we are through all 5 games. Let's sum it up now for those of you that are just getting here. And by the way, hit that like button if you can. Who are your favorite stacks right now?
The way things look right now, Atlanta, Kansas City, and the Mets.
All righty. Toronto and Kansas City are the top 2 for me. I'm going to be lighter on Atlanta. And then from a pitching perspective, more Stroman, normal on Stroman, more Berrios and more Luzardo is where I lean. Lighter on Inoa. You're going to be different. This is the most we've disagreed on a show in a really long time.
I think this slate is just like, to me, almost everything is like the same, give or take. And so it's just like, even where we disagree, it's not like, oh, I think what you're saying is crazy. It's like, oh, I like this guy a little bit more than that other guy. And you don't. Yeah. This is a slate where, to me, ownership's just going to drive everything. Like, if I come back to do, I guess it's live before lock tonight because of football, and my favorite stacks are completely different. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if I come back and it's, oh, I love Toronto, I love the Yankees, and I love Baltimore, because now suddenly the Braves are getting tons of ownership, and so is KC. So it's just ownership's driving everything here, because I think that so many things, both offense and pitcher wise, project very, very similarly.
It's going to be a difficult slate tonight, everybody. Deep dive for you today?
The article, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Deep dive from Adam coming out a bit later. This is going to be a tricky slate. Make sure you're watching live before lock later tonight for 1, weather updates, and 2, this is going to be a kind of complicated one with 5 games. So thank you for joining us. So much going on here on the channel. Make sure you're liking and subscribing and notification belling this channel, Awesemo Odds and Awesemo Fantasy Football. We've got like 5 or 6 more shows going today. Plus, contenders videos for Showdown tonight. They're already out, DraftKings and FanDuel, from Yours truly. Go check those things out on the Awesemo main channel. Anyway, good luck. Enjoy tonight's slate. We'll be back again tomorrow to do it all again.